Right now, we are living through something literally unprecedented. We're watching massive, earth-shattering shifts happen simultaneously across global economics and artificial intelligence. Welcome to The Explainer. The ground beneath the market is fundamentally moving, and today we're going to unpack exactly how these huge macro trends are colliding head-on with explosive microtech developments.
Here is our roadmap for today. First, we'll hit the new global regime. Then, America's structural fragility. Third, we'll dive into the micro side with NVIDIA's explosive AI growth, and finally, rethinking the technical moat. We're moving from high-level global finance straight into the strategic survival tactics you need for the AI era.
Now, I want you to keep this question in the back of your mind as we go. What actually happens when the fundamental rules of the global economy completely change? Because according to a really fascinating macroeconomic interview from the Prague Finance Institute, we're not just looking at a cyclical blip here. No. We are actively navigating a massive, structural regime shift.
Section 1. The new global regime.
So for the last 30 years, we've lived in what's known as the Great Moderation. It was a pretty comfortable era, right? Defined by globalization, cheap labor, and low inflation. But the Prague Finance Institute points out that our new reality is basically a walk in reverse. We are heading straight into an era of fragmentation, capital controls, and structurally higher, sticky inflation, meaning prices go up and stubbornly refuse to come back down. Ultimately, capital is just going to flow a lot less freely.
And guess what? Markets are already reacting aggressively to this. Just look at the decade-to-date numbers. Gold is up a staggering 116%, and U.S. equities are up 108%. Leaving global fixed income completely in the dust, it's actually slightly negative. So what's happening? Investors are actively reallocating toward hard assets like gold, viewing it as this neutral safe haven anchor in a world that's fracturing apart.
Chief economist Andrei Schellholt puts it perfectly. He notes that we're moving from the post-1989 era of Pax America directly into an age of fragmentation, capital controls, and capital scarcity. The takeaway here? The easy days of passive, set-it-and-forget-it asset allocation are totally over. Policy volatility is spiking, making geopolitical hedging an absolute must-have strategy, not just an afterthought.
Section 2. America's structural fragility.
Let's zoom in on the United States and look at its specific vulnerabilities under this new regime. Take a second to really absorb this jaw-dropping number. Negative $25 trillion. That's the U.S. net international investment position. Essentially, it's the massive gap between what America owns abroad and what foreign entities own inside the U.S.
To put that crazy number into perspective, a deficit of 80% of GDP means America owes the rest of the world far, far more than it actually owns abroad. Objectively speaking, this highlights a deep structural dependence on foreign capital. Analysts point out that if foreign investors decide to slow down their buying of U.S. debt, or worse, reverse it entirely, the financial system faces immense strain. This deficit is basically the Achilles heel of U.S. economic exceptionalism, and it leaves the dollar incredibly vulnerable to sudden shifts.
Building on that, the data lays out some harsh structural realities we have to acknowledge. U.S. government debt is nearing 125% of GDP. And get this, interest costs alone now eat up over 20% of revenues. Economists suggest this makes financial repression practically inevitable. That's just a way of saying inflation will probably be allowed to run hotter than interest rates to quietly melt away all that debt. And when the central bank and the government basically fuse their policies together, government spending effectively becomes a direct wealth transfer. The result? It exacerbates wealth inequality, which in turn fuels domestic populism.
Section 3. NVIDIA's explosive AI growth.
All right, let's shift gears. We're moving from the macro friction of sovereign debt down to the microeconomy. And we have to talk about the absolute behemoth that's currently absorbing massive amounts of that scarce capital, $81.6 billion. That is NVIDIA's record-shattering revenue figure projected just for Q1 of fiscal year 2027. It's a wildly stark contrast, isn't it? While national balance sheets are looking incredibly fragile, corporate hypergrowth at the bleeding edge of AI is accelerating at a pace we've literally never seen before. That $81.6 billion represents an 85% jump year over year. Think about that for a second. And it implies they are on track to generate nearly $200 billion in pure free cash flow over a single year. As market analysts note, this isn't your standard tech boom. This is an unprecedented parabolic momentum phase entirely driven by the massive, real-world physical construction of global AI data centers.
Now, NVIDIA's gross margin expansion is what Warren Buffett would call the ultimate litmus test. Look at this. It jumped from 60.5% a year ago to an unbelievable 74.9% today. In a market where competitors are absolutely scrambling to catch up, this massive margin expansion proves one thing for sure. NVIDIA has undeniable pricing power. We are watching a true, unassailable economic moat play out in real time.
But, it's not all smooth sailing. The data highlights a very real regulatory risk here. Export controls have effectively closed off the $50 billion China market to U.S. industry. For NVIDIA, that translates to an immediate $8 billion revenue hole projected for Q2 alone. It's a stark reminder that in this new, fragmented global regime we're in, unquantifiable regulatory risks can threaten even the most powerful tech giants on the planet.
Section 4. Rethinking the technical moat. So, what does this massive AI hardware build-out actually mean for everyday business strategy and software engineering? Well, let's look at this incredible anecdote reported by Forbes. A single Cloudflare engineer, armed with an AI coding agent, rebuilt an entire open-source framework in roughly a week. 1 week. That completely compresses work that used to take a whole team of engineers several quarters to pull off. We are literally watching the potential death of traditional, handwritten software coding.
And the capabilities are just skyrocketing, 71.7%. That is the current success rate of top AI models when solving real-world software engineering issues, according to Stanford's AI Index report. Guys, just a year ago, that number was sitting at roughly 4%. 4 to 71% in a single year. That's insane.
So the crucial takeaway here is that our entire definition of defensibility has completely flipped. The old tech moat relied on incredibly complex software architecture built slowly over years. It was super hard to copy. But today, AI acts as a universal solvent. That old moat is now basically a tech puddle. Features that used to cost millions of dollars and take years to build can now be instantly dissolved and replicated by generative AI.
And it's getting cheaper by the minute. In just 18 months, the cost of running GPT 3.5 plummeted from $20 down to just 7 cents per million tokens. At this kind of velocity, rewriting an entire legacy system using AI is frequently cheaper than paying human engineers to just maintain the old code. The barriers to entry for building software features have effectively dropped to zero. So how on earth do businesses actually survive this? Well, Forbes outlines what they call survivor moats. These are the structural advantages that AI simply cannot hallucinate into existence. First up, proprietary data. You need unique, unscrapable signals. Second, workflow entrenchment. You want to become so deeply integrated into a customer's compliance or legal plumbing that ripping your software out would be a total nightmare. And third, physical infrastructure. We're talking actual concrete, fiber optics, and real-world edge deployments.
Which leads us directly to the new playbook for technical leaders. The old rules are gone. You absolutely have to prioritize data gravity, the concept that massive, unique datasets naturally attract more applications over flashy new AI features that literally anyone can copy tomorrow. And instead of measuring time to market, you now have to measure time to parity, as in, how fast can a competitor completely copy this using AI? Finally, you have to build for architectural agility so you can seamlessly swap out those underlying AI models as they inevitably get better and cheaper.
We've covered a lot of ground today. We've gone from a shifting global economy defined by scarce capital to the absolute dominance of AI infrastructure, straight down into the total commoditization of software itself. So I want to leave you with this final provocative thought. In a world where AI can write the code and capital is increasingly scarce, what is your true value? Thank you so much for exploring these massive shifts with me today.